Okay. So, Arseny, I'd love to hear more about how you do things with your team in general. I think you mentioned that you try to make sure that your team is focused, they understand the vision, they understand the goals and what the business is all about. You also mentioned to me before, getting them on customer discovery calls, which I find very interesting. And I'd love to hear more about that, because sometimes you'll find people saying that, oh, engineers shouldn't be talking to customers for whatever reason, right? It could be because sometimes they lack the business acumen, they don't know how to deal with customers, or sometimes customers can be pushy and ask for things, and engineers don't know how to say no. So there's many reasons why people would tend to keep engineers from talking to customers, but there's so much that's left off the table when they don't, right? And I'd love to hear your experience on how engineers do talk with customers in discovery calls.
Okay, so since you mentioned that, engineers should not talk to customers. Yeah, so this is a reference that I hope many people can understand. So, yeah, lots of things that you mentioned. I'll try to address them as we go. So I'd start with the fact that I'm a big believer in fulfillment, personal fulfillment, that you just cannot do your work just to pay bills. It's a very extrinsic motivation, and it creates churn, unsatisfaction, and so on. So speaking of gamification, brief mentioning here, I'm using Yukai Cho's framework Octalysis, and it's all about core drives that motivate people. And there are 8 core drives, and in a nutshell, well, I'm going to reference very often here a couple of things, like there's extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, stuff you do for somebody and stuff you do for fun because you enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And there's what he calls black hat and white hat. So black hat is stuff that loss aversion, unpredictability, which is very often used with hook models when people are hooked to something because it's unpredictable and they have loss aversion to, like, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? I don't want to miss it out. Mm-hmm. And so all these black hat things, they are prone to create anxiety, impatience, and things that are not long-term scalable or sustainable. And they need to be balanced with white hat stuff that creates meaning, accomplishment, development, things like this. So when I think about people coming to work, it's not because they need to pay bills just to get money. Otherwise, they could just go and try to rob somebody. But they decided to spend so many years on learning a trade or skill, profession, and become somebody. And at some point, most of developers realize that there's just that much that you can learn. It's not an infinite path to, I don't know, like Kung Fu movies where you can spend 80 years perfecting one punch, but there's just that much you can learn about Java, or that much you can learn about React, and that much you can learn about computer science in general, after which it becomes science and you become a scientist and you change your profession and you become a professor somewhere, I guess. So then they want to apply that stuff in a meaningful way, and they see no meaning, especially when they get just specs. And they want to learn more about the business. So I'm trying to add this core drive 1, epic meaning, and core drives about accomplishment and development to their lives by sharing the mission and the vision, why the company exists. So here I'm referring to Simon Sinek's Start With Why framework. And I pretty much go and explain like why this exists in the first place. So why I started my side project Cubismore, a different project management tool. Well, it was because starting a project is already complicated enough. It's already stressful enough. And you need a tool to help you do this, not to just add more burden on you to like extra work to do what? Just write down tasks, plan your next steps, see who's working on what. It should not be that complicated. So by bringing those ideas, like why we exist, I'm then going further with this framework and explaining how we do that. So at FISPAN, we bring, in a fintech that I work, so we bring banking products closer to the end user ecosystem. When I do Cubismore with my co-founder Alex, we remove things that don't let you focus on what matters right now. We remove extra things that pollute your field of basically like your focus. You see extra things you don't need to do. All these little extra things, they create burden on for you at the moment, like your conscious getting overwhelmed, feel burnt out, and eventually you just it's really hard to focus already. So why do you need extra stuff? Mm-hmm. And then from how, very often I don't even need to describe what it should constitute of. So for project management tool that we're building, anyone who learned about lean methodologies, they already know about waste and value. So just asking a question, does it create value, or it's just another bell and whistle that just distracts me from something? Certainly we apply certain things from other frameworks like Blue Ocean strategy. So we think we're not like, we try to realize that we're not just doing some feature parity thing with competitors. We're doing this on purpose. And then if you, it's not a rocket science, like explaining those little things and then just making a developer or anybody basically a full member of the team who is concerned with the company's goals. And just basically what I'm saying to them, you are think of yourself as a co-founder with a superpower. Somebody's superpower is to write code, that's your powers. Somebody's superpower is to create landing pages. But we're all trying to achieve the same thing, whether it's a big exit, whether it's profitability, or anything else.
But what about, because there are always going to be those kind of people, and I've seen them, right? They're great engineers, great developers, but they will come and tell you, well, I don't care about like the business side. I just write code, and you know, give me some requirements, and I'll put that feature together for you. But I'm not interested in getting involved in all the other stuff. And I've seen them. I'm not sure if you have. You have.
100%. Yeah, we have.
What do you do about that? Because you know, I mean, there is some legitimacy to what they're saying, because usually it's coming from a point of view of they're in pain somehow. Usually it's because, you know, the business is suffering somehow, and they're like, you know, okay, I do my job well as an engineer, and it's clear that the business owner or the managers or the people on the business side don't have their act together, and they have a responsibility to figure that stuff out, and it's not my problem. What do you say to people like that?
Well, we did have people like that, and I've seen a lot of them, especially when I worked at corporate environments. And these people have, you know, there is no company that's perfect for everyone. There is no engineer who's perfect for everyone. They have their place in legitimate place in bigger companies, where it's just one of the ways big companies work, by having some CPO and a bunch of VPs for each product line who have product managers for features, and some of them do scaled agile framework, which I particularly hate because I don't like the distribution of things by feature, but I rather do that by value. But it's just a side note. And then they may have those people writing specs and all that. It can exist, right? It's just as much as a person wants to take. Maybe they just want to pay their bills, and their true passion lies in buying a red sport car and running a marathon and go fishing, or doesn't matter, right? They just are not passionate about their work, or that's how when they enjoy their work, they don't want to. It's like not everyone wants to be a team leader or a manager, and they just want to have fun with code. That's perfectly fine. Although I do have a lot of people in my team who love to have fun with code, but they still use this as a tool to bring value. Mm-hmm. But to people who say that I don't care about the value, the users just need to you know, have specs and I'll code them. So, well, bluntly saying, we're not at the stage where we can work with these people, But I do try to figure this out, whether there must be a reason behind this. So very often the reason I saw, like most of the times, was that the person was just afraid of the subject domain. And they've learned so much about computer science, all these frameworks and some magnificent patterns and microservices and whatnot, and they're following Martin Fowler blog and read it like a Bible. And they automatically assume that, oh, this is what's happening in whatever business domain, telecom, fintech, whatever. And they just don't want to accept this, like, oh, I need to learn this, that, it's not my job. And it's just rejection. So I try to show them that's actually exciting and interesting. And they don't need somebody to come to them and tell them what to do. We actually really don't have people like that. We have somebody who can help with customer discovery. That's their superpower, but doesn't mean that you cannot go there and have your own opinion what you should do for the customer. Mm-hmm. When this doesn't work, usually this works. Usually people feel fulfilled and excited about this. Like, oh, now I understand why I'm doing this. I see that the work I do has impact on people, on actual living human beings that I have never met in my life before this call. And they love what I do, or they hate, and I try to fix that. But sometimes we did have cases when the person just realized, well, I want to build a career. I just want to I want to be a manager. And for that, I need to grow, whatever that means. So for them, the growth means, I guess, just having direct reports and going the corporate ladder. So given that our ladders are short, they might find themselves in a corporate environment where it's more interesting, the ladders are longer. I once found myself with having 2 indirect bosses where each one of them asked me to sabotage the works of each other. Then I thought, well, career is not for me. It's not my thing. But they enjoyed that life. They loved the politics. They did not care about the product, the customer, users, nothing like this. They were like, oh, actually, you don't know how corporate politics works. This is like, I write this email, I CC it here, I BCC there, and it goes like there, but I write it like this. And then it's like, well, some people have fun there.
They may thrive in such an environment while others not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we just say, well, looks like we have different values, and that's okay. People have different values, they have different religions, voting, like political beliefs, any sort of beliefs, and that's fine. And as long as their beliefs, it sounds somewhat strange and dangerous probably these days, but I'm talking more about how to do business beliefs. So we see that in this stage of our company, we really need to stay lean. So we don't hire. I actually wrote a blog post about why Scrum is bad for startups. And too long didn't read version is that you actually have 2 full-time employees who do not produce value, but they produce muda. They're like Scrum Master and Product Owner. They don't create anything that the user values. They help others build something else. So it's pure, not like a pure lean, whatever thingy. So I'm more referring to this. Don't really, yeah.
And I'd love to see that blog post because that may be something that I'd like to read and maybe even share. Let me take this into maybe another direction, but sort of completing the thought. Since you're very familiar with the Agile and Lean world, just recently there were celebrations on the 20th anniversary of the Agile Manifesto. You may have seen some of those festivities going on. And one of the things that I noticed when I went to all these events for the Agile 20 Reflect was there were very few engineers, very few developers attending those events. So most of the people that were in the audience were project managers, scrum masters, agile coaches, facilitators, whatever, but very few developers, if any at all. What are your thoughts on that? Being someone that is both a developer and someone that is that identifies themselves as an agilist or a lean thinker.
Also, as a marketer, I would say maybe the marketing was done differently and they were not considered a target audience, so they may not know
That's
about
weird,
it.
right? Because the Agile Manifesto was written by developers. You
Yeah.
talked about Martin Fowler, for example, right? Like, but very few actually. And this is not just about that particular event. I think in general, I go to a lot of meetups, whether they be in agile space or lean space, and very few developers actually attend. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if I had to make wild guesses and shoot in the dark, my guess would be that this is because when people speak about agile or lean or anything, they think it's a management framework, as opposed to, especially when you have Scrum and all these highly ritualistic frameworks that imply processes, not communication over processes, as opposed to Agile Manifesto values. They forget that this is actually a set of values. And that's pretty much why I don't really care much about frameworks or Agile per se, but more about values. And that's why I switched to entrepreneurial ideas, because it's like an essence. Like, you need to pivot fast sometimes. You learn something. Why would you waste when I started my career and there was Agile, the sprints were 2 months, 3 months. These days, sprints are 2 weeks normally. But we practice actually continuous deployment. So as soon as something gets merged to master, like after code review, of course, and it runs through a couple of continuous integration pipelines through tests and such, it just gets automatically deployed to production, to live users. We don't have like planned release on Sunday night. Everyone's awake in the middle of night, and it makes no sense. It's ridiculous. The business needs time to learn, but it doesn't need time to just wait to apply this knowledge. So we can pivot. And many developers actually hate that. That's why they had this overprotective Scrum rituals for, oh, no, we cannot do that. We either cancel the sprint or we add it to the next sprint, and then we do retrospective, and we waste another 55 hours talking about all this. But what we've learned is that what we're building, nobody needs. Why do we need even to waste more time on that? That's why you need to understand what you're building, so you don't have to have this retrospective, and your product owner doesn't have to communicate this to you. Your Scrum Master doesn't have to fight with you on that. So I think people engineers just think, it's another thing for project managers and that, because many of what we observed, many BAs from the waterfall times rebranded themselves into product owners. Many project managers rebranded themselves into Scrum Masters. And fun fact, waterfall was never meant to be waterfall, because people didn't read the full waterfall article that was written. It was meant to be iterative, but like one super.
Right. And there was language along the lines of that you should not do this. So actually, this is a good segue. You talked a little bit about processes and how you focus more on value, which is, I think, the essence of the Agile Manifesto, as you mentioned. The values came first, and want to pivot a little bit, but use this as a segue for your product that you're building. So Cubismore. I'd love to hear more about why you felt that there was a need for a product like it. What does it do, and why is it important? And specifically, how do you feel that maybe other tools missed the mark, and you were able to maybe try to fix that with your product?
Right. So I became interested in entrepreneurship as a form of agile development and as a form of fulfillment in my life, being like personal growth and such. So, and then I've learned about different feedback loops that exist. And the most popular one is Lean Startup, of course, where you build something for somebody and you go and try whatever people like. It's so popular, so you almost never hear about the founders or users method. There's a book about that. I unfortunately forgot the author. I can follow up later. It's a great book. It removes the stigma from the fact that you can build for yourself. If you have a problem, you're probably, and you research the market. You know that this doesn't work for you, and you still have this problem. then probably you're not alone. Statistically speaking, there are probably other people like that who feel this way, and you may try to build for yourself. And this is going to be the shortest feedback loop ever. So your first customer is yourself. And we had this situation. So this was not the first attempt when we tried to build something with my friend as like side hustle. And this time it was different. Instead of trying to go lean startup with researching the market, seeing opportunities, and God forbid, like that, method of, oh, what if we build this? Like, that insane thing that they show in Hollywood. But instead we were, okay, look, we do this every time. We come up with an idea that we want to try to tackle, and then it's time to actually act on it. So we need to create tasks. Back then we were even using words like stories, epics, and all that. We stopped doing that a long time ago. And it's got basically, as a solo founder or small, like several co-founders or small business owner, or that kind of little audience who wants to start anything, they have different things they need to worry about. Not only write code, but create traction. You should start doing this from the very beginning. That was our mistake. You need to worry about marketing, operations. If you need to be compliant with something, you need to start caring about it immediately. So you have things that are very diverse, but you need to take care of them. You don't need a separate team that just makes you SOC compliant, for example, or GDPR compliant. You don't need a dedicated team who does marketing for you, or like builds a landing page, or learns the language the users use, or does any of that. You're not just building a product, you're creating a business. So those different aspects, yeah, sure, you can say this is an epic, but then what does it mean? It's just an aggregator. It's a container for things. So, and we thought, well, we definitely 100% not going to use Jira or Redmine or Asana, any of that. They have the same kind of thing. Back then, Asana did not have boards. Jira did not have boards either, but we knew what Kanban was. So we just wanted to start with boards immediately, but we had kind of high level view that looks like a mind map sort of, but it really shows you epics visually. So you may have marketing epic, but really it can have sub epics like, well, landing page or pay-per-click or something else. And those can have other things like sub epics, but there's no even words for that. So just, wow, why bother thinking of words, extra language that somebody needs to learn? I'm a visual person. My co-founder is a visual person. Like, okay, that'd be like mind map to present what's the company. That's the high level view. And then when you dive deeper, you have boards because this is useful, and you have tasks, and that's it. But it's just what it looks like, but it does other things. Like, we know multitasking is horrible. You still can do it right. And I wrote a blog post about it as well, but we limit, like what Kanban does, what theory of constraints says, we limit number of tasks you can do. Like I mentioned, I hate managing people. I love inspiring people, empowering people. That's why I hate when project managers do that. So that's why in our tool, you cannot do that. You cannot assign tasks to somebody. When somebody takes the tasks from the backlog, or you can plan tasks, it auto assigns this task to this person when they move it to in progress. If you put it back to backlog, it removes the assignee. So similarly, when you're planning, that's something we observed. Like, people fight with procrastination, and not very well, very often. So we've learned, well, lots of things is overwhelm. That's one of primary goals. Why we're building this is to fight overwhelm, so you can focus on what matters. And people get themselves overwhelmed, especially when they're scared to start working. They're planning. So they create roadmap, backlog, and such. But we just, okay, 2 people, you can plan not further than 7 or 9 tasks, whatever the formula I had in mind. I forgot the formula, but it's definitely not going to be 15 tasks. So you cannot plan that far, especially if you're agile. Well, guess what? You may want to pivot. You may want to unplan and then plan and do what? Retrospective? That sounds like Scrum to me. So we don't want to do. So we have all that, lots of little things that don't let you shoot yourself in the foot with all these things. So people think there are constraints. We think they're safeguards.
Mhm.
and let you just keep doing, like, keep advancing, getting closer to your goal. You have so little time, people have limited attention, life is overwhelming, just less is more. So that's why we're building it.
I like how you mentioned, you just try to get your thoughts out. You're very visual. I just read a blog post by Kent Beck just the other day. I think maybe he just posted it yesterday or the day before, on how he does mind mapping. And he does it all analog. Like until now, he's like, you know what? I don't use any tools. I just get a nice big sheet of paper, markers, different colors, and start drawing. And version that, maybe get a rough blueprint and then start, refining it and finding the relationships between different branches and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that is something that is sorely missed when you work with tools. And not to say that tools aren't useful, they can be. But also, being forced in a virtual environment like most of us have been over the last year or so, there's this missing part where you could actually grab a marker and just start drawing something on a whiteboard and discuss it with your team, as fluid and easy as that.
Yeah, but interestingly, we're not even competing against that as a product. So that's something we had to really address from the positioning point of view. That's not mind map as, like, in a broad sense. It's just a way to present scopes of work or their direction or intention or like specifics. So we don't have things that allow you to change colors or move things, or because this is like, okay, you brainstorm things, you have certain way to like mind map. I would use mind map for, like, I don't know, actually not using mind map, so I'm not gonna speak anything here. But what we found is things are pretty typical. So there can be innovation project that needs to find product market fit and to research the market and do some work. It's the same thing as you're a startup, you have particular structure. It's pretty stable. You don't really need to move boards, nodes of the mind map back and forth, change the color. What does it even mean if you change the color? What value it creates? It's not a PowerPoint when you do a presentation to some people and they're like, oh, font should be bigger than that. No, it's just a container for your tasks. If you color your, and we have different color themes for, like, it can be dark, light, and there are 10 probably, or 8 themes. So if you need to change colors, well, probably it's not the task management, work management. It's probably some ideation thing. Then you use this to visually code something for some reason. And I personally never had to do that. I'm sure there are people who do that and they use proper mind map tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just the way to break down a huge, unmountable piece of work, like start a company, into little blocks, into smaller blocks and smaller, and then to achievable, doable blocks. So that's one of the reasons why people procrastinate things. They think it's heavy, it's big. It's like there can be multiple reasons why people procrastinate things. Like the goal is not defined. Like, I'm going to have a healthy lifestyle. What does it even mean? What's healthy? I have debates about it. Like, some people say I don't eat healthy because I eat whatever red meat. I say, well, it's perfect, super healthy, it's great. So what does it even mean? You can say, well, I'm going to maintain my body fat percentage at this level. So that's the goal. But now the question, how to achieve that goal, so you can create steps. I'm going to do at least 10,000 steps every day because maybe I hate cardio and I cannot play basketball outside when it's cold because we have those restrictions. So I really hate what's going on. Like, I can just walk as an alternative. So that's achievable, right? So that was the goal. Like, you have this company that you want to build and you have so much stuff to do. You need to put it into back to buckets, and those buckets should have addressable things like, I'm going to do this today. Done. I'm going to do this today. And, I plan to do this before. We actually don't have due dates for planning. because that's too much thinking. That we embrace Kanban fully, like we plan the pipeline, we don't plan the dates, because if you don't have externally facing customer that you need to like deadline to meet, why do you need even a date? Why you say you're starting Monday, starting tomorrow? Is it because you're procrastinating and then you need to hate yourself because you're late? You didn't do it on Monday, you started doing this on Tuesday? No, you just need to start doing it. So we don't have due dates at all. We had for some time like this week, next week, but then very often we found ourselves that people are bad at estimating things. Mm-hmm. So you cannot say, I'm going to finish these 3 tasks this week 100% and then switch. So it's all overflowing to the next week. But does it mean that you should stop planning the work? No, it should not.
Yeah, no, I get it. So you're talking, you want to give people a tool to organize themselves, organize their thoughts, and then get started on it, but with full responsibility over themselves, because it's their own company, their own product that they're building, and it's really dependent on them to motivate themselves. But it gives them the container to do so without all the extra noise that would sometimes remove from focus or distract people. But some people would argue a tool like Trello is something like that, right? A lot of people use Trello for personal Kanban, for just putting up tasks without certain release dates or certain iterations or containers like that. What would your response be to those? Like, how is it different from a tool like Trello, for example?
100%. So what I used to say when we did not have a tool that we've built and we try different tools is, it doesn't matter what tool do you use. You can use sticky notes. Mm-hmm. Your process should be scalable and you should be happy with it. It should get you where you are, where you want to be from where you are. So Trello was a great start. That's why many people switched from all these complex tools. It removed a lot of complexity, unnecessary complexity. But Trello is not scalable. Trello is, those boards are really sticky notes. You cannot have 50 boards in Trello. First of all, you should probably not have 50 boards in your site. That's overwhelming. We have to think for that too. Like we encourage people to create links to projects, smaller accomplishable projects that you can actually complete. Have you ever seen a completed project in Jira or Trello that where every task is like marked? You've probably seen in Trello, but never seen an epic that's completed 100% completed in Jira, or like 5 epics in a row it's 100% completed. That's horrible. You don't have that. You have that sense of it's never ending epic. Mm-hmm. So we really dread that. So Trello is great. Like every tool is great. No matter how I feel about Jira, it has its place. It's great if you want, like, if you're a 50,000 people company and you have to hire people who can maybe be like 20% of us as productive as people in our company, but at least they are somewhat productive and they have all these processes and managers, and you create a life cycle in your Jira. And then you create specific policies and you create special reports for some strange sophisticated managers who also build Gantt charts and adjust them every day because something is late. And somebody builds a tool for them that does this for them automatically. There is place for that, right? So if you're happy with Trello, I just don't believe you can scale Trello to start a company.
I agree. I haven't seen Trello used at scale. More on a personal or team level.
We even had onboarding done with Trello. Basically, at FISPAN, we had onboarding in Trello as a set of tasks and a bunch of boards. It grew out of proportion, especially for developers who now we have a super sophisticated onboarding process to streamline the value creation. So people come and they do exercise, they do this, there's like very detailed onboarding, so they can start producing stuff on the second day, actually, not without pressure.
That's cool. Well, if anyone listening and is interested in knowing more, I'm guessing they can go to cubismore.com and they can get more information and try it out. It's for free, actually, right now, at least, right?
Yeah, we just released the organization feature that imposes certain. So some companies you need to be compliant, especially if you work with insurance, banks, whatever. Then you have to have policies like enforce MFA, enforce a domain name. So that's something we started charging companies for. But we're like in a sort of pre-launch stage. We're gathering feedback, and yeah.
Well, hope you best of luck in your not luck really, but it sounds like you've got a methodology behind what you're doing. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that will evolve.
But I'll take luck as well.
Luck is always good. Okay, well, thank you, Arseny, for your time today, and
My pleasure.
Look forward to hearing from you soon.
Okay.